Hey everyone, Trev here at the Darkroom, and over the past couple months I've been shooting with all 6 of Lomography's 6 black and white film stocks and have been comparing them. I've been comparing the low ISO film stocks as well as the 100 ISO and the 400 ISO film stocks. I've been shooting with the same camera, same settings, same lens, and it's all finished, and we're working on a blog that will show the scans side by side with in-depth information. But until then, we wanted to show you the do a print preview and show them what they look like on our black and white silver gelatin prints. These are both matte prints, 5x7 with the border, which is my personal favorite. I love the matte. And as you'll see from the beginning, the Phantom 8 ISO has a lot more contrast than the Babylon 13 ISO. And sometimes I like that strong contrast and sometimes I don't. And I'll go through and show you. I love it for this photo right here because there's pure white, pure black, and it just looks really good and really pops out. And then with stronger contrast, what often happens is that you'll lose detail in the highlights as well as the shadows, which is what happens here. There's less detail in the shadow of the Phantom than there is with Babylon. Compared to Babylon, also has a little more detail in the horizon right here compared to Phantom is completely blown out, where this looks, they both look really good. Again, it just comes down to what you prefer. Here are some portraits, and I think that the Babylon does a little bit better with skin tones, and the Phantom's contrast is just a little bit too harsh. This was in daylight, so if I was in even light, this would have done a lot better because it would have added a little bit more pop. Also, all of these were shot with a Canon Elan 7. Again with the same settings, and then KH was kind enough to send us some really fast lenses to be able to shoot all of these. They're either the Sigma 135 f 1.8 or the 40mm Sigma 1.4. If I didn't have the fast lenses, I would have had to use a tripod during the daylight. Most of these were shot at a 60th of a second, absolutely wide open. Because this low ISO just needs a lot of light. And again, the strong contrast of the Phantom, you lose that detail in there, which it doesn't bother me too much for this shot, but you do get a little more detail in those shadows in the foreground. And here's a double exposure. Again, super strong contrast. Don't even see any details in this face compared to this one. I do. And then for these two, I actually really like the Phantom. I just feel like it's a little bit more dynamic, where this is a little bit more flat. But I often do like stronger contrast, so I'll usually pick that. So the next one, this is the 100 ISO. This is the Earl Grey. And this is the other 100 ISO that Lomo has, and that's the Potsdam Kino 100. Now these are very, very close. The Potsdam has a little bit more contrast, slightly finer grain, slightly punchier tones, but for the most part, they're almost identical. Again, it's a little bit sharper. It's hard to tell in these, and that's why in our blog, we'll show some crops to get up close up and show you, but these were so hard to tell the difference between that I had to get the negatives out and look at them with a loupe and find out which was which. Especially this one. The only way I could tell the difference between these two is that his head was looking straight forward, and I could tell in the negative, and this one he was looking to the right just a little bit. They're just so close to each other. So it's hard to go wrong. If you're looking for a good 100 ISO film and you're choosing between these two, it's pretty hard to go wrong with either of these because they're pretty much the exact same when it comes to being printed. And we'll be again, you'll be able to see them. They look a little bit different in scan, but in print, very similar. Okay, and moving on to my favorite of the black and white film that Lomo offers, and that's their 400. I really love both of these for different reasons. I kind of compare it to Kodak's Tri-X and Ilford's HB5. They're not the same, but in the sense of how I would shoot them. If it's low light or dull light, I would go with Tri-X. If it's bright and sunny, I would go with HB5. And that's how I would do these two. If it's really bright and sunny out, I would go with Berlin. And if it's low light, I would go with the Lady Gray 400, which is this. So as you'll see, the Berlin has lower contrast, and I like this portrait of Brian a lot better than this one because there's more detail. These are the same settings, same light, same everything, just a little bit different framing. And then with these, you can see again the lower contrast. You have a little bit more detail in that dark part of the lens, where this one has less, but I actually like the stronger contrast. And then these two portraits, I actually could have opened up a stop on both of these, and it probably would have looked a little bit better, but I still like both of these. I actually like the lower contrast again, because I lose some detail and her skin got a little bit dark. This is when the sun started to poke out in these scenes, but again, just less contrast. In the Berlin, and the Berlin has much more noticeable grain than Lady Gray does, but I don't mind that. The grain is very pretty, and I actually prefer the grain of Berlin over Lady Gray. And this shot I really like. This shot was taken at a 30th of a second at f1.4. And I was resting the camera on a railing. It was really dark, so I'm glad that this turned out, both of them. But this one just has, the Berlin just gets so much detail in those shadows, and it's just really pretty scene. It captured it really well. Well, this one has a little bit more contrast, and you lose some of the detail down in those dark shadows. I really like this shot as well because it shows the difference. If it was very sunny out, the Berlin would have handled it better, but since it was really flat light, it went kind of flat and dark compared to this. Gave it, the Lady Gray gave it a little bit more contrast, which I prefer. So I like this shot a little bit better. And then this one right here, again, just same old, more contrast on that, less on the Berlin, but you can, it's hard to tell, but there is a lot more noticeable grain here, and it just has a very classic look. I like this a lot. And then this is a silhouette scene where it's just a little punchier tones with the Lady Gray and less with the Berlin. And then I'm ending on my two favorite shots, with this being my favorite shot. I love this photo. It has nice pure whites, but it's not blown out, with nice pure blacks. Very controlled, very good detail, beautiful grain. And this is a good example of where if this was really sunny and I used Berlin, Berlin probably would have handled the scene better if it was really sunny, but since it was overcast and kind of dark, this Lady Gray has more contrast. It actually brought the scene to life a little bit more, gave it a little more, made it a little bit more dynamic. But stay tuned for our blog, which we will be announcing in the coming week, and we'll go into much more detail showing the comparisons between these and side by side and why you might shoot one over the other.